holding on to these positive, powerful, peaceful thoughts and feelings. Just bring your attention back into this room. And if your eyes are closed, open them. And then look around and smile. And smile at everyone else in the room. And hopefully you're feeling a bit more relaxed. Yeah? Yeah, so, when we're in this state, it can make a big difference, can't it, when it comes to things like anxiety. If we're coming from a space of peace and detachment, where we're a bit, looking at things a bit objectively, we can see things from a different perspective, and that can help us to deal with things in a different way. So I'm just going to mention the definition of stress, and then you're going to talk a little bit about some of the signs of it and things like that. So the definition that we're using is as a fear-based state of mind that we project onto ourselves, onto others, and onto situations, circumstances, and events, either in our life or generally. So it's coming from within, and we're projecting it out onto other things. Yes. So, take us into that a bit more.
Thanks,
detail.
John. Thanks for that lovely relaxation. Is that your definition, by the way, from your book?
I think so, yeah.
I think so. Very nice definition. I just want to share some stats, really, because I was just doing a bit of research, and I want to ask you a question. What do you think is the most commonly reported cause of anxiety at the moment? Generally in the world, what would you say? Yeah, money. The cost of living. And I think in this particular study, they said that that was one big factor for people, that people are not managing. And that's something that we don't really have control of, in a sense. And so I think what you were saying, John, in terms of just being able to take time and stop and pause and check the quality of my thoughts, we can't change that, but I can change my response to things around me. And I think that's an important thing to remember. And so the other aspect that was really interesting was the whole aspect of stigma and shame that is around this aspect of anxiety. How many of us can really just say, I'm really feeling stressed, I'm really feeling I can't cope? How many of us can really say that openly to people at work, people even in our family? You'd think we'd be able to say that, and maybe some of you can, that we can just let our guard down and say, look, this is really difficult. I know for me, I can't always say that. And I think when people say to you, how are you? And if I was to say, well, do you really want to know? I don't think they'd be interested. They want me to say, I'm fine, and then we move along and we carry on with our day. But actually, the honest answer might be, actually, I'm not okay. And then you'll see like a reaction on, oh, really? Oh. And then people don't really have time to listen to your story. And having spent many years in Southern Africa and living there, it was quite a contrast where people are really interested in how are you, and I had to learn that. Because people ask you not just how are you, but how is your health? How is your family? And it takes 5 minutes. And I had to sort of get used to that, because I wanted just something very quickly. Hello, how are you? Can I have? I was working in a school, and I'd go to the secretary and I'd say to them, hi, good morning, can I have? And I have a whole, and they'd say, Samantha, and it would start. And I thought, yes, even just that acknowledgement and that check-in with each other is very, very supportive. And so I think all of us, in some way or another, is experiencing levels of anxiety. And I know in this particular study, 1 in 5, which is quite a lot, actually 20% in this particular study, was experiencing anxiety, if not all of the time, most of the time. And the impact on our physical body, we know, is quite detrimental. So whether it's high blood pressure or ulcers or chest pains, all of these things, the body is giving us a sign that I need to change. And for myself personally, I know that change is a really big factor. I mean, I've lived in about 6 or 7 countries. I've moved so many times, and still I find change challenging. And I think, and I notice because then the mind races, and I can feel the heart palpitations. And I keep asking myself, what is that? What's the message? What is that really about? And what I realized, actually, as I began to process and ask myself that question, as you were saying, some kind of fear, it was all to do with the relation with myself. And what I realized, actually, was in terms of just having compassion with myself. And I know that Joan said earlier that, oh, you've been meditating for 26 years and you've cracked it. Absolutely not. I think when you meditate, you become more in touch with your feelings, and you begin to see the things that were dormant and the things that, for me, I hadn't really addressed. And so you can be meditating for a while, for many years, and of course beautiful experiences, but yet there's always a part of ourselves, I feel, that we don't access because we're scared, or we don't have the resources to face it. We don't trust that we can even look at it. And I'm in a process now where I really want to know. I really want to understand this relationship with myself that then impacts the relation with others. And so I'll just share one little story. I kind of knew that. I mean, I kind of felt, I'm happy with myself. Things are going well, no real issues. But then I went to see a kinesiologist about 3-4 months ago. And it's the muscle test. And so she did that great. Then she did my leg. She went, oh, what was that? It was like there was no muscle at all. And she asked me a question. Samantha, how much do you love yourself? And that was it. That opened up a whole new exploration, because I knew there was something, but that was like, I could feel that in my body, literally. And that was the journey for me that I'm still on. And so I think it's this level of conversation and honesty, for me, that's really helped me to be okay with my anxiety and move beyond the shame and the stigma that people associate with it sometimes. And there is an assumption that if you meditate, you should be like stress-free. Well, actually, it's not true. Because I think actually more things come up when you start meditating. I don't know, many of you have been coming for decades, I think, right? And I think some of you may have the same experience where things begin to surface, which is great, because when you see it, you can change it. If it's buried, what you're seeing is the projection of it and the reaction of it and blaming other people for the feelings that I haven't owned for myself. When I start owning my feelings, then I think we can move towards reducing our levels of anxiety.
Very good.
Very
I
good.
think that's it. We can go home now. Yeah, so awareness is a key factor, isn't it? And this is something which I'm, really grateful for, because, in my journey, I didn't really have much awareness on one level, even though, I had a degree in sociology and I went into the prison service, and I was quite good at helping prisoners to realize themselves in a way, because I think what everybody needs, perhaps more than anything else, is someone who will listen. Mm. And my job in the last place I was in was to interview prisoners who were in for serious offences. It was a top security prison, and we had to interview them after 3 years to see if they had any insight into why they'd committed the crime which they had. And that always was a very moving experience, actually, because I went into it non-judgmentally and with an open mind, and allowed them to express their story. And by the time they'd finished going into all the details of the awful things which had happened in their childhood, etc., I felt, well, if I'd been in their shoes, I could have done exactly the same. So really, compassion and being non-judgmental, about yourself, first of all, is very important. But at that stage, as I say, I could do it for other people, but not for me. And it took me many years later, when I had a bit of a breakdown. I was off work for 6 months, and during that time, it was partly through stress. I think, how have I ended up in this situation? No energy, completely drained, etc., etc. And one of the things I discovered was that I couldn't say no to anybody. I had no control in my life at all because I was a people pleaser. And even in the prisons, looking back, they used to joke and call me, "Of course you can, McConnel," because if a prisoner came and asked me for something, my initial response was, "Oh, yes, you can." I mean, they never asked for the keys to escape, but they'd want an extra letter to write home, or they'd want a visit from their probation officer. And I say, "Yes, of course you can." And I was doing this my whole life with everybody, with my family, as well as work colleagues and all the rest of it. And I ended up completely drained and thought, why am I always running around? I have no time to myself at all. And it was this anxiety, really, was at the root of it, wanting approval, and desperate for approval, and desperately afraid if I said no to anybody, I'd end up being rejected. And I had a terrible self-image, completely low self-esteem. And when I look back now, it was all the conditioning which had gone on in childhood and filled me with fear. So I ended up with a stammer and things like that. I couldn't speak in public. When I took my 11 plus, which shows how old I am, because they don't do things like that now, do they? The pen was shaking like this all the time. I couldn't think straight or anything because I was just full of fear. Fear of failure. It's a big one for a lot of people. You just don't want to appear incompetent. You don't want to appear imperfect because people might laugh at you, they might judge you, etc., etc. And I think this is a big thing for a lot of people, especially now with social media. People are projecting these perfect lives, on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, all these happy, smiley images. And everyone really, it's like, the duck, isn't it, sort of swimming calmly on the surface, but underneath the feet are going like that. And nobody ever shows the feet going like that. But everybody really is struggling with self-acceptance, with self-love, and feeling good about themselves. What helped me more than anything was coming to the Brahma Kumaris and realizing that as a soul or a spiritual being, originally we're full of peace, love and happiness. So in other words, we're innately good rather than bad. And that was a turning point, because if you know you're good, then you can nurture and develop and bring out the goodness. If you think you're bad, then you're always going to be suppressing and controlling everything because you're no good. Does that make sense? And so for me, that was a light bulb moment. And then I was able to build on that and create much more confidence and feel better about myself.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
I think I kind of agree in terms of the meditation practice has really helped. And what I see now is that there's lots of things going on the surface, right? There's clashes or there's relationship issues. That's all happening. But there's like this place inside where I feel personally where I can anchor myself. And it's about choosing, what do I focus on? Do I focus on this calm resonance that I know is there because of the practice of meditation? Or do I get involved in the chaos of what's going on and all of that? And sometimes I'm in that chaos, but other times, more recently, it's more like I can choose to be here. And even just saying that to myself, I choose to be in this meeting and I'm going to cooperate, rather than saying, oh my God, here he goes again. Oh, I wish you wouldn't say it. Because we can almost go into spaces and we're already stressed. Even before we get there, we're preempting that he or she is going to do this or that. And maybe they did that last week, but my attitude is not going to help. And so if I decide and set myself in terms of how I want to be in the meeting or in this particular exchange, then already I feel that I'm holding the reins of myself, as opposed to always preempting things. Like there was a meeting the other day, and I was saying, it's going to be a really difficult meeting, and they're going to say this and that, and it was completely the opposite. In fact, the conversation was just really healthy, everybody listened, and I was basing it on other conversations with this particular individual. And I think we do that a lot. So a lot of it is in our head, and that's where, of course, the stress starts with our thoughts. And see, I like this idea of just valuing our practice. I don't know how many of you are meditating. I think many of you, I see you every week, most of you, I think, and I think you've been coming here for a long time. But I think it's so important to validate whatever you're doing for yourself. And even if I've lost it 8 times yesterday, today I lost it 7 times, I celebrate. Well done! Lost it means I got angry. And so sometimes we don't validate our successes, however small they are, because if we don't do that, who else will do that for us? And so it's a choice. And this is my little mantra, I choose to. Because if I feel I don't have a choice, then I'm going to react, then I'm going to feel like everything's happening to me as opposed to happening for me. And I do believe that no matter how difficult it is, if I look back on my journey, I see the strength, I see the benefit. And think of your most challenging moments, not currently, because you're still in it, but things that have already happened that you've managed to move through. It does create a sense of, I can. Does it? I think so, right? And I think that's why we need to remember those moments more and more. And so definitely just this practice of understanding my nature, my true nature of peace and love, grounds me, but sometimes, we lose it. But it's okay. It's okay. And just to come back to that understanding and the experience that I've had on my journey, for sure.
Yes, I'd like to take up 1 or 2 points there that you've made. I think recognizing that we do have that power of choice is essential. And a lot of people don't realize they do have a choice. Because we've all been conditioned to think in a certain way, to behave in a certain way. And for example, we do a positive thinking course, don't we? And we've been teaching positive thinking for so many years, we think the whole world knows all about it. But actually, when you mention this in a talk or, in one of the stress management training sessions in workplaces, most people aren't aware there is such a thing as positive thinking because our whole culture is based on negative thinking. It's all based on judgment, it's based on blaming, it's based on complaining, it's based on putting people down, it's based on fear and manipulation rather than the opposite. We don't get much about appreciation or gratitude or anything like that. In fact, the whole system is almost designed to make us dissatisfied so that we'll buy more things and we'll feel we need new clothes, we need this, we need that, we need the house, etc., because if we were happy and content, we wouldn't need half the things that we've got. So negative thinking is plugged in to the whole system. I don't know whether, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so the very first thing is to recognize, we have a choice over our thinking, and that's where it all starts. And for me, that's been hugely empowering because you go from being a victim, feeling hopeless and helpless and all the rest of it, it's all my fault, to a totally different state of mind and being where you can start looking for solutions. So now every challenge actually is good. It's not bad because it's a learning opportunity, it's a chance to learn and grow. And I've had many different situations in my life where it's helped me enormously. I've had dengue fever, which was quite a challenge. fractured my pelvis, and at one stage when I was doing my stress management training, I ended up with no money in the bank at Christmas, and I thought I can get, an overdraft for £500. And then for the first time in my life, I'd always lived on overdrafts. The bank refused me, and I could have gone to pieces, but I've developed a positive mental attitude, and I think it'll be all right. Everything will be okay. And this is so important. If you generate powerful, positive thoughts, and you have a positive attitude, and you're looking for the best and hoping for the best, it makes such a huge difference. It really does. And, I feel I was looked after, and money did come. I've never had lots, but I had enough, to pay the mortgage. And I was able to get a few Christmas presents, in the end. So that choice is very important, isn't it? And it's all starting in here. We are the creators of everything. So you've created your whole life, The life you have now, it's been created by you. So have you created a happy life? Have you created an anxious life? Have you created, a wonderful, positive, amazing life? Even if the circumstances have been challenging, because we can't always control the circumstances, but we can choose how we respond to these things.
As you're speaking, John, I was remembering many years ago when this was open and we had a Living Values educational conference, international, and I had attended that, and there was mixed group, and I remember there was a guy from Somalia actually, and that was many years ago, but I still remember that his sharing, and he'd lost absolutely everything. Absolutely, he was the top of his profession in Somalia. He'd lost his wife, he lost his child, he lost his home, absolutely everything, and we were just riveted listening to his story. And then he said, but you know what I have? I have myself. I have the future. And it's up to me, again, this whole aspect of choice, it's up to me. I've had this loss, and of course he was going through a lot. But somehow out of that, he was able to see this glimmer of light, and I was fascinated as to how he was able to see that. That glimmer of light that made him see that there was still something, that he was still there, and that he could still make a difference, however small, for his own community. And for me, that was such a practical example of choice, given the amount of loss that that individual had had. It was incredible. And I always feel there's a power that we have, and we see it, but then we forget it when we go through our storms and life happens to us. And we're amazing because we have this capacity to adapt, to adjust, no matter what the situation. And that's not a small thing. And sometimes we don't, as I said before, we don't realize, we don't bring to the front all the things that we've managed to come through. Do we celebrate that and go, wow, God, 10 years ago I was there. And now look at me. I'm not 100% happy, but I've come forward, even if it's one step. Isn't that great? No, you don't look like it's great.
I met a woman on the train yesterday. I came back from Spain seeing my daughter and the grandchildren. And I had my back to her initially because she needed assistance coming onto the train. And then someone said, can you move your case? And I turned around, and I think she probably was subject to the thalidomide, tragedy. And she got on and, I moved my seat and I was sitting opposite her. I was so impressed by her positive attitude. She had to request assistance getting onto the train, and she was managing to find her phone in her bag, and her hands twisted like this, completely positive, completely natural, chatting away as if nothing was wrong, talking about her kids and husband, and she was just off to Israel to go and visit her mother. She goes to see her mother in Israel for 4 days every 2 or 3 months. As if there was absolutely, well, from her point of view now, she's adjusted to everything, there was nothing wrong, you know. And when she goes over there, she says, quite often we spend all the time in a bomb shelter because there are always bombs going off. But she says, it's amazing how you get used to these things, you know. And she's still going there, and in her, you know, with her incapacity, or from her point of view, it's not an incapacity, she's overcome it. And I thought, how amazing, you know, so cheerful, so happy, so together, you know, planning everything. She you know, gets to the airport, the hotel the day before, so she doesn't have to sort of rush anything. And off there, she goes to see her mum, who's pretty old now, and helps her, and then comes back again a few days later and thinks nothing of it.
Yeah. I was just thinking that, you know, it's true that when we have this ability to be positive, things work, but sometimes you just can't, right? Even if you have a practice, sorry to go back there, but I think just to make it more practical as well, and I think at that time when I can't meditate, even if I've meditated for many years and there's just a block, nothing's happening. And so for me, what really works is just exercise or writing, walking in nature. And I think we've just sometimes we can sit there forcing and thinking, why is it happening? I should be able to meditate. But let me do something that's going to ground me. And it should be, you know, easy and light, and not to be hard on ourselves. Because I know that I have this habit, well, still, to put pressure on myself, you know, and I'm running around doing 50 things. I mean, what's that about? And I was asking myself, why are you doing that? And this aspect of performance, why are we performing? We're not on a stage. Well, we kind of are on a stage right now, but life isn't about a performance. And yet I feel that's what happens. We're all trying to finish the task and prove that I can do this and I can do that. And are we really meeting? Really? Are we really meeting? Am I seeing you? Yes, I'm seeing you now. But am I really listening? Not to your words, but to the intention. We're just picking up your energy, your vibrations as you talk, as we have a conversation. And I think half the time we don't meet. And that's a shame. Because this moment won't come back. Even now, this moment won't come back. And yet, how much of our day are we really present? How much of our day am I really engaged? Or am I just thinking about the next thing and the next thing? And yes, the next thing, a whole list. Sometimes, because I live here, there's so many things to do, and I think, goodness, my head's full of lists and, you know, rotas and all kinds of things. And I just have to say, Samantha, you can't multitask. I don't think there's such thing as multitasking, really. There might be a lot of things that I have to do, but I can only do one thing at a time, right? I can't multitask. I can only now do this conversation with John and all of you. Now I'm present. And so it really is just about, for me, slowing down and just recognizing what I can and what I can't do. The most important thing has to be the relationship. It cannot be the task all of the time. All of the time. Then what is the purpose of being here for me? What is the purpose of me being here if I can't have real engagement? And I don't even put that on the top of my list. And I think we don't do that because I think it's fear. I don't think we really want, because to meet you, I have to meet me. If that makes sense. I have to be in tune with me, and that, I don't know if I want to do that because I have to unpack a lot of my stuff. You know, I remember just before I had somebody wanted to talk to me about 6 months ago. You know when they say, "Can I talk to you, Sam?" And that means you've done something that they haven't liked. So then I said, okay, great. So for about 20 minutes, I listened to all the things I hadn't done, I hadn't performed. And I was like, God, this person is spending 20 minutes thinking about what I haven't done? I was like feeling quite compassionate for this, but I should do this, and I went, okay. And I said, well, okay, I accept that, but no, that's not me, that must be somebody else. Because I was discerning, yeah, sorry for that, I did that, but not that. And then after 20 minutes, I went, do you know what? And I meant it. I really love you, because this person is so dedicated and committed. And then this person started to shed a tear, started to cry. Not cry, but tears began to flow. And she said to me, you know, the last 20 minutes, it's nothing to do with you and all what I've just said. It's because I'm not functioning. It's because I'm not looking after myself. And she was able to own that. And we met. We met. It wasn't about this and that. And it was a beautiful moment when we really met. And I said, that was a lovely conversation. We'll probably have a few more. There'll be something else you don't like. But there's a beautiful connection because we met and we were honest. And I think that's important in terms of our relationships and just being present for each other.
Yeah, what I'm practicing at the moment, which I'm finding really helpful, is I picked it up off somebody in a talk similar to this, and they were saying that the secret of their success, because their relationship with their husband had improved, and I said, oh, well, how come? And she said, I accept rather than expect. And that was like a light bulb which went off for me. You know, and I've become very aware, lots of the time I have quite high expectations of myself to begin with, of course, and then of other people. And then, if they don't fit in those expectations, then it leads to so many other complications, doesn't it? And you end up saying, why don't you do this, why don't you do that, etc., etc. And, I did it. I've tried to accept everything. An incident occurred, with my daughter when I was in Spain. And I said, oh, why don't you do this? She was choosing a bracelet, for a present for the kids to give to her. And I started saying, you have to be careful, you must get something that doesn't break easily, And I suddenly stopped myself halfway through, and then I had another light bulb, I was being egotistical, I was being arrogant, I was, just expressing my opinion. What's it got to do with me? Really, accept. It's amazing. You accept people, accept situations, accept untidy drawers, accept dogs that are jumping around all over the place, rather than getting angry and upset and judging and condemning and blaming and creating tension and fear and anxiety in yourself as well as other people. It's very liberating. Because really it's nothing to do with me. What right do I have to have an opinion about what someone else is doing? It's up to them. They're responsible for their life. I'm responsible for mine. If they want my advice, I will give it. But quite often we give an opinion whether it's wanted or not, don't we? And usually it's not a very fruitful one, quite often. So, and that's made a big difference, actually, to myself, first of all. I feel much more relaxed, much more content, because I've stopped judging and expecting things with myself. And I live in a totally different situation. I live by myself all the time, so I've got all the time in the world to do whatever I want. But you can still give yourself a hard time, even if you appear to have nothing much to do apart from shopping and cooking and washing and cleaning and going for walks. So it's all in here, and this is where we need to turn. This is where we need to sort it all out, clean it all out, and start relaxing more and enjoying more. And we're, at the moment, and we're so fortunate still, aren't we? We're so fortunate, despite the cost of living crisis and everything else. We've still got a health service, may not be as good as it was, etc., but compared with many people, we're very, very fortunate, aren't we? And having that, this is the other key thing which we need to say, there's two things actually, which make a huge difference. Knowing you're an eternal soul and you're not going to die, because there's a lot of fear and anxiety around dying and death, isn't there? You know, and you think this is the only life you've got, and you've got to, you know, make the best of it and all the rest of it. And the older you get, the more anxious and depressed you can get, because I've only got a few years left, and you know, I could have a heart attack. So nice not to have to go there. Everything is good. You know, what will be to some extent, but the soul will carry on. I mean, that takes a huge burden off, I think. That's me, anyway. And then the other thing, which I'll leave you to talk about.
Good thing I know it, yeah. So yeah, the other thing is this connection with the divine. And I think for me personally, if I didn't have a practice like this where I'm able to recharge the battery of the soul on a daily basis, many times a day, I don't think I'd be where I am today. And so for me, just cultivating a relationship with a source that needs nothing from you, absolutely nothing, is a good remedy for anxiety. Because every single relationship that we have needs something. It may not be that demanding, but I still need to give them time, or there's a subtle expectation still. But in this connection, it's the experience of unconditional love. And I don't know if we can give that to each other because we've learnt conditional love. And I think that's the quality, if you like, that heals the heart and allows us to make that journey deep within ourselves. We can't do that alone because there's lots of things to face. But with this beautiful connection of love, it's easy. And 24 hours, 7 days a week, doors never closed. We can't do that for a human being. I can't phone you at midnight, can I? Can I? I could. Oh, I'm having a bad day. Can you help me? No, you say, I'm sleeping. What are you calling me at this time for? But with the divine, it's it's accessible. And it's just a thought away. It's just a choice that I make to cultivate a relationship that is going to sustain not just me, but the people I live with, the people I'm in contact with. And so that's a really good investment to make. So if I'm meditating for 5 minutes a day, do 7. Whatever you're doing for yourself that's making you feel better, emotionally, spiritually, increase it. Increase it, keep increasing it, because that's going to be our support at the end. All supports, I don't know about your life, all supports that I used to rely on, I can't rely on them anymore. People or structures, I'm just seeing all of those just slip away. And in a way I think that's forcing us to strengthen ourselves, but also strengthen our connection with this source that is open for all of us. Doesn't matter what your religious background might be, even if you don't have a religion or a faith, it doesn't matter, it's one source. And so can I take out time to cultivate that relationship and experiment? You know, not just to accept it blindly, but if I sit in meditation, what happens? And just I like to share this story because when I was living abroad, and we get up 4 o'clock in the morning, that's our first meditation, and I sat down in the little meditation room, and I asked God, and I was joking, really, like a little child, how much do you love me? I was kidding, really. How much do you love me? And I always share this story, and then it showed me, and for half an hour I was in bliss. I could feel all this love just, I was like, wow, that much? And then the proof of that is when I went to the classroom, and the kids, I opened the door, and the kids went, Miss Samantha, you're really happy this morning. They could feel this energy. And I went, but I'm always happy. No, you're more happy today. And they could feel this beautiful presence that I probably didn't appreciate. And I think through working with children, they made me validate the work that I do on myself, because they see it, 8-year-olds, they see it and they validate it. They used to validate it for me. And so yeah. I'm just seeing the time, John. Maybe we should open it up for questions, and then we'll have a meditation to end. It is 7:55 already. Is there any questions that you may have? There's a mic somewhere.
Or comments.
Or
as well,
comments. Or a song. No.
yeah. A joke.
Yeah. There's a mic. Yeah. It's just this lady here. Maybe just put your hand up. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I thought that was really good. But my question is, if you do live with someone, I mean, I know you have to, it affects you if you're angry with them or upset, and you're not supposed to do that. But if you're actually living with someone who, for instance, has a very, is lots of clutter, has a really messy house, and you're totally the opposite, for instance, how do you, it must be really hard work. Have you got any tips on how you actually bring yourself to accept it, because it's affecting your life?
Yeah, good question. I think that happens a lot, doesn't it, in different places, and with other things as well, because we do have differences. I think negotiation can be one thing. Being assertive and stating what your needs are, and explaining how it makes you feel. And then maybe, you have a compromise, so a certain room is always clean and tidy. I mean, it's like when my kids were teenagers and that, at one stage I was saying, clean your room, it's a terrible mess. And there was all these conflicts going on. In the end, I let go of that and just left them to it and closed the door and ignored it. It depends, what impact. If it's someone in the kitchen who's always making a huge mess, then you have a choice of either fighting constantly or just accepting that's the way they are and just clearing up that because it makes you feel better. And then, working out a compromise. What would you say?
I would say sometimes it's in our attitude. Sometimes we're saying we're trying to be, okay, trying to explain, okay, I don't mind, but if you can just. But when there's a slight attitude of irritation or I'm just fed up, even if I'm saying the right thing, that's what they're picking up. And so for me, what I've learned to do is to work on that internally and then say it and get to a point where I've accepted it really and I'm not fed up. And I find that helps because they're still picking up something. And that's why there's either they're resisting, they're doing it deliberately because you're not going to tell me what to do. There's that, because I haven't really let go of it. There's still an expectation that I'm being nice, and I've said it 10 times, and they should. Even that slight thought will be a wall and will be an obstacle. And I remember a similar case of a lady that I knew, and the same thing, her daughter was just great. I mean, her room was a mess, like literally all the time, food, everything. And she was doing the meditation course. She got to a point where she really, really didn't mind, not even a percentage. And the daughter wondered, why isn't she saying to clean the room? Like, she was like waiting. And then Mum didn't say it. Once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then she began to, I'm not saying in this case, but she began to clean the room, at least take the dirty food out of the room. She began to make a few steps because she completely let go. And that in itself takes some inner work. So we need to check, is there any residue where it's still coming through my attitude or vibrations, because that's going to create some kind of resistance and non-cooperation. Yeah.
I'm not that bad on the computer and the online stuff, but that's what's really causing me a lot of stress and anxiety at the moment, because it seems like everything is, you're being told to go online for absolutely anything in your life.
True.
And you go online and then maybe it doesn't work, and the amount of time it's taking out of my life. So I'm thinking, do I stop and do meditation and then go back again? I mean, what do another IT course, but it's also this feeling of being forced into a life that I am not choosing. Correct. And I don't have a choice. I don't feel I have a choice. Yeah. So I'd be interested. Any help?
So, that's correct. I think this aspect of having a choice is really important. And when we don't have a choice, like the pandemic was also not a choice where we had to stay inside. But this aspect of IT, it's true, everything, even banking, I'm having to do that online. But I think that's where I need to, in a way, change my own psychology and begin to ask myself within that limitation, what can I choose? So I might choose to do a course, a very basic course. And I know for my mum, she phones me most times to do very small things, and I say, just do a course. But what can I choose given the limitations? Because that is the reality, and it's going to get even more computerized. That's the reality. So I can resist it and get frustrated, and of course anxiety will build up, but I can make a choice, and it might just be that I just do a course, a very basic course to learn, to get me through what I need to do. I don't need to know programming, but the basics. And it might be a chore and all of that, but that's going to help me to be less anxious. So what's more important for me personally is my state of mind, my peace of mind. So what choice can I make, and I don't know the answer to that for you, that can make it a little bit easier for me to make sure that I'm much more relaxed within myself, because that has to be the most important thing, and perhaps my own responsibility to be able to make one step in that direction. I don't know if that helps.
Thank you.
But John, do you want to?
Well, I think you could actually go a lot deeper on one level with it and say, what's this triggering off in me from the past?
True.
That I'm feeling forced to do something, because whatever is happening on the surface here, it has deep roots inside. And then when you start looking down at those deep roots, like we were always forced to, like in my generation, we were forced to stand in line, march into the classroom, all that sort of thing. You weren't allowed to speak unless you were spoken to. There were so many forces around. And you can then obviously have a lot of inbuilt resistance and anger. So, maybe it's useful to go down there and acknowledge and accept some of that and let go of all of that. Because at the end of the day, we really have to let go of all this stuff from the past, which is actually, we're still living it in the present. In a way, the past is in the present, because we haven't resolved some of the underlying issues which are controlling and affecting our behaviour. Does that make sense? Cool. So, there are both ways, they complement each other. But I think the deeper you go to get rid of all of that stuff, so that you're just dealing with everything in the here and now in a peaceful, non-judgmental way, and accepting, what can't be changed, and then changing what can be changed. And there's benefits on the online thing, lots of benefits actually. It's quite convenient, saves you having to go to the bank, it saves you a bus journey and things like that. And same, you don't have to go to travel agents anymore, you can just book it all online.
I do book the holidays.
You do? All right,
much needed.
Yeah. Right, well, if you could do that, you can do the other things.
Yeah.
But it's that authoritarian bit, they're making me do this, and it's triggering off all sorts of other stuff.
Yes.
That's what I
Okay.
suspect.
Thank you.
Good answer. Anybody else? One last question before we have a final meditation? Yeah. Nick, just here.
If there was just one takeaway for us all to go home with tonight, what would it be?
What those questions. One thing. Okay.
What's yours?
What came to my mind when you asked that question, Nick, was just to be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself.
And I think mine would be just let go. Let go of the fear. and just have a go. Because otherwise, we're not going to grow or change, are we? I mean, I never, in my wildest dreams, thought I'd be able to sit on a stage and, talk to people, from the state I was in the past. I'd have elocution lessons and all sorts of things. And even now, actually, if say we were all in a group, and we had, in a circle, and we had to introduce ourselves to everyone else, even now, it brings back some anxieties, and I think, oh God, it's going to be my turn next to say my name.
Yeah.
I mean, here on this stage, because we've got a position, it's easier, isn't it, to talk. But in a group, I can still feel anxious, and I always go to parties late. I never go early. I couldn't cope with being the first one there. What would I say? What would I do? So I haven't, sorted it all out, but, I can get by much more easily now than I could, when I was younger. So, that would be my advice, really.
Do you want a mic? Because we're recording it, actually, so it's good if you speak in the mic. That's great. Thanks, Nick.
What Sam said is really struck me, because the real essential truth is there, right
Yeah.
in front of you.
Do you want to speak in the mic? Sorry. Yeah.
The essential truth is there, up on the wall. That star, that bright light,
Agreed.
is what you focus on. You focus on the infinite. You become a small part in infinity, and your problems evaporate. You know it's okay.
Absolutely.
Bloody well know it's okay.
That's true.
And that's what I think I'm getting from it.
Yeah.
You need to know it's okay.
Yeah.
And that's the okayness.
Lovely.
The divine. It's not God. It's not
The
God.
divine.
It's the divine.
Lovely.
Wait.
Lovely point to end on. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. For the meditation, we just mentioned there's 4 of those available if anybody wants them.
Do you want to mention it? It's your
Well,
book.
yes, okay then, yeah. So, I wrote this book during the lockdown, Breaking Through the Darkness, and it's had quite a lot of good reviews and things. There's 4 copies, I think, available at the back if anybody wants to buy one. The normal price is £7, but because we don't have any cash or change, anyone who's got a fiver and wants to buy one, they've got £5 notes, they can. I'm not saying anything more about it than that. It's called Breaking Through the Darkness, How to Defeat Depression, Anxiety and Stress.
Although John's my friend, but it is actually very good.
Well, you did read it, didn't you? Yeah.
I did. I read it. I interviewed John about the book actually online. It was quite. I know it's really excellent actually, and there's some nice meditations. I was going to take a meditation from here, but maybe we'll just do one. I'll just do one myself. So, thank you so much for just engaging and being present for this conversation. And we'll just have a few moments of meditation together. So just sitting comfortably, just reflecting on what you've heard this evening, and noticing how you're feeling right now in this moment. And when we take time to turn inside, we're able to feel a place that is still and stable. And that feeling comes when I connect to myself as I really am. Not the body, not the role, but just the soul. This spark of energy, spark of light that is filled with so much peace. And so in my mind, I say to myself very slowly, I am peace. I am peace. Peace is my true nature. And whatever happens on the surface is just the surface. But when I go deep down inside, I'm able to anchor myself and just be, letting go of situations, letting go of the past, and allowing my thoughts, my mind, to connect to the divine, the one who is the ocean of peace, the ocean of love, the one that is constant, available, and all I have to do is just be present and create a powerful thought to just align myself with the ocean of peace and open my heart to receive rays of peace, rays of love, just filling my being. This is an eternal connection. And all I have to do is just remember. Remember who I am. And remember who I belong to eternally. Om Shanti. Which means I am peace. Thank you. And Om Shanti.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure others would just like to say thank you very much for a very informative and helpful talk, I think. Everybody seems to be awake, so that's one good thing. Okay. So thank you both, Samantha and John. Thank you very much. I'd just like to let